everybody. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Dole Institute of Politics. My name is Chance. I am a member of the Dole Institute Student Advisory Board here. It's the official student group of the Institute. The Student Advisory Board is a bipartisan group whose members can access many great opportunities through their involvement. If you're a student in the crowd and you'd like to get involved, just contact us by emailing dolesab@ku.edu. After the presentation, we're going to have some time for questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and a student worker with a microphone will come to you. Please ask just one brief question. If you have difficulty hearing at any time during the program, alert one of our staff members and our student volunteers, and we will assist you. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you all to please turn off your cell phones. And now join me in welcoming the director of the Dole Institute, Bill Lacey.
Thank you very much, Chance, and thank you all for coming out today. This will be a very enjoyable and educational and entertaining program. Before we get started, though, I wanted to just share something with you. Sometimes we get speakers because we know them, and sometimes we get different speakers because they've heard from other people who speak at the Dole Institute. Well, we get today's speaker here in Lawrence, not only because I think he likes to come and speak to us, but also because his better half was raised here. So I wanted to introduce Laura Gravino. Laura, just wave at everybody. She's from Lawrence. She's a Lawrence kid, and I got to speak with her. You weren't with Ian when he was here 3 years ago, right? Okay, so I got to meet her for the first time today, and I asked her a bunch of questions about their Everest truck. I'm gonna do that with them sometime, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. But anyway, Ian first spoke here in 2014 in July. That was just, I think we decided a couple months after the huge earthquakes in Nepal. He spoke about Everest at that point. He is the youngest Irishman to ever summit Everest. Is that still true, or it was at the time?
It was at the time.
In 2008. He does a lot of very interesting projects, fundraising projects. He tries to raise money as part of all the adventure stuff that he does because of his commitment to helping people in need. He is based in Vail, and as I said, married to Laura, and we are delighted to have him back. He put on a fabulous show for us about Everest 3 years ago. Today, I hope you don't mind me dressing this way because we're going to trek to the top of Kilimanjaro. So please welcome Ian Taylor. Ian.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. I'm sure my microphone will go up as needed. Good to be back. I'm not sure how many people were here the last time I was here. A couple of people, 3, 4, cool. Yeah, so I can talk all new stuff and get you excited about Kilimanjaro. As Bill said, yeah, I was on Everest. I was there when I was 29, so I was like one of the only people, like there was 304 people at the time that climbed Everest in their 20s. So a small group of people that, climbed Everest at that stage. So I was kind of, I'd been to Kilimanjaro, I'd been all over the Alps, I climbed in Scotland, Ireland since I was a kid. So I had lots of climbing experience, but I had very little high altitude experience. And I think Kilimanjaro was probably one of the most humbling experiences for me when I did it for the first time. And now I've been going back there for the last decade. I've climbed it 23 times, and I hope to do it again twice next month, back to back. So I'm going to do back-to-back trips, come up the mountain, come back down, pick up the next group of people. And it's amazing watching them because when they start, they're like, super excited to be here. They get to the top, get back down, they're like, done. And then it takes like 10 days, and then they're like, oh, let's go and do something else. So altitude is kind of an enticing thing to experience, or lack of oxygen in the body. It kind of pushes you to a place where you can learn a lot about yourself, but you can, it takes you to a whole new place. Like all these climbing trips and adventure trips that I've ever gone on have helped us raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for trips or for people all over the world. I'm an ambassador for a charity that works in Uganda, in Burundi, Congo, and South Sudan now, raising money for water projects, and we have a target now of trying to raise $2 million for water projects in East Africa. So we're climbing, but we're also trying to help other people. When we climbed Everest, we built a school called the Mount Everest primary school in Uganda. And that school has grown from 80 to 240 children. And we sponsor children at the school, and we do this type of activity. So the climbing is purely, it's a business, it's a lifestyle, but it's also we're trying to help other people where we can. So today I'm going to take you up Kilimanjaro. Been up there 23 times. Hopefully by next month or the end of next month I'll have done 25. And my goal is to hit 50 summits in my lifetime. Now some of the guides that we work with have climbed 200 times. So 50 isn't a big deal, but they live on the doorstep. And they're up there. Some of our guides are going up like 4 times in a month. So they'll come back down, go back up again, go back down, go back up. So once you're acclimatized and acclimated, it makes it easier. When you've got that conditioning in the body, that's also the critical element. So those two things are really, really important. And that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about both of those. And then I'm going to talk about a range of different things. But acclimatization or acclimation to the lack of oxygen is absolutely critical. And then the kind of physical preparation that's required to do it. So has anyone been up Kilimanjaro? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4. Anyone, 5, how many days did it take you? 6, 5, 9, 5. So super interesting. I did it in all those, like, not 9, but I've done it in 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, 8 days. And to me, the only way to do it properly is to do it in 8 days. And I've done it on all the different routes, all the way up the mountain. We have the Shira route, the Lamosha route, the Machami route, the Moranga route. There's a lot of different ways to approach it. And my approach is to go on one route on 8 days, and that is proving to give us a 98% success rate if people come with the right conditioning on the mountain. And I was up Kilimanjaro for the first time in 5 days, and I'll never forget it because I was stumbling over, I was falling, I was getting sick. I barely was able to function correctly. And then a friend of mine who I went to Everest with, he came up the mountain with ease and, walked up the side of the mountain, couldn't believe that, I was like taking so much time. And, everyone acclimatizes differently. So understanding how you specifically perform with lack of oxygen in your body is kind of super important to understanding how many days you should take to go on the mountain. So for me, I've had people that were athletes, triathletes, runners, all try it in like 5 or 6 days and struggle because their bodies just won't let them adapt. And other people, they walk up the side of the mountain, they don't understand what the big deal is about lack of oxygen, and they climb it in 5 days and come back down again. But over time, to be statistically safer and to have the best experience, the more time you spend on the mountain, the better. And the best route, in my opinion, from climbing it is the Lamosha route. So coming in from the west side of Kilimanjaro, coming over to the other side of the mountain, all the way over to this side, and climbing from this side of the mountain. Best scenery, best acclimatization in terms of going up and down, and to me, the best route around the mountain. This is a picture at Kilimanjaro in 2007. I took it from the back streets of Moshi, and there's 2 main towns. There's a town called Arusha, and there's another town called Moshi, and they're the kind of 2 centers for people kind of climbing. Arusha is more of a gateway to safari and the Serengeti and all things safari, and Moshi has this kind of dramatic view of Kilimanjaro that rises up. But I mean, this was in 2007 and 2014. All these glaciers are gone that were up on the top, all broken off. If you can see back here, there was a lot more ice up there. So definitely the ice is melting quite quickly. They expect it to be gone in the next 10 years. So right now we're trying to push the government towards doing, rainwater harvesting on a large scale on the mountain, because otherwise you're going to have no water. Without hydration and without water, it's going to be super challenging to climb unless you have a load of people dragging in big bottles of water and they've no way to recycle them. So there's kind of challenges that are going to come up with this mountain, and those kind of snows of Kilimanjaro are going to be gone pretty soon. probably in the next 10 years, we'll see. But this is what it looks like from Moshi 2. It is an amazing geological giant, like standing looking at Kilimanjaro from the side of the street, 3 degrees south of the equator. It's just something mind-blowing. It's sometimes 90 degrees, and you're looking up at the summit zone, which can be, 0 degrees Fahrenheit in the same day. So it's quite an amazing place to be. And the beauty of it, the experience of it, looking at it in a picture, you kind of have to be there to really take it in and really experience the mountain. Another picture on the side of the road as you're kind of driving from one of the towns to the start of the trail. It really is dramatic, the scale of the mountain as it just kind of pops up out of the landscape. There's a couple of other volcanoes. There's one on this side called Shira, and there's another volcano on the east side which is called Moenzi. But really just this cone of Kibo, which it's called Kibo, or Uhuru Peak, just kind of pushes its way up above the clouds. And I suppose the best time to go and see it when it's like this, there's only like 4 months to get it, where there's usually less cloud on the mountain. That's kind of January, February, and then July, August, into early September. The rest of the time, it's either monsoon or cloudy, and you don't really get to see the same views as you would. So there's really 4 months if you were going to climb it. The 4 best months are January and February, and then kind of July and August. Into September too is okay. Once you hit October, it's cloudy. Once you hit November, starts coming into a mini monsoon season. Into December, it can be dangerous. One of my friends died on Kilimanjaro a few years ago. He was hit by lightning, and he'd been up there so many times, and then he just got struck badly. And that can happen at any time. We had a group on the mountain a couple of years ago. It was in February, like traditionally one of the better times, and then all of a sudden this storm rolls in from the bay or from the Indian Ocean, and there was a tail end of a cyclone and just dumped like 3 or 4 foot of snow on the mountain. So you never know what the weather's going to be like, but in saying that, it's traditionally quite stable, or it has been up till now. So there's kind of specific months you should think about going, and there's other months you should really stay away. And the months that definitely stay away are kind of March, April, and May. Any other month, doable to climb, but staying away in those kind of key monsoon months is kind of important. But, the mountain's usually on display early in the morning, late at night. You get amazing views and amazing scenery. On the mountain, probably some of the best sunrises and sunsets you'll ever experience on a mountain. It's quite amazing. So we come in on most of our trips on the west side of Kilimanjaro. We come in on the Lemosho route, and there's a number of routes in through that region. There's called the Shira route, and there's the northern circuit now. And to me, it's just the best way to come in. You start lower, you don't make big jumps in altitude. So you come in at like 7,000 feet, and then you go to 9,000 feet, and then you go to 11,000 feet, and you're making short jumps in your acclimatization. So that's the kind of critical factor, as I talked about, trying to acclimatize well, acclimate to the lack of oxygen. And if you do it better early, it stands to you when you go higher. So when we were climbing Everest, I went to Everest Base Camp for the first time. I went up to 11,000 feet, spent 1 night there, continued on. By 14,000 feet, I was sick in bed for 24 hours. Vomiting, diarrhea, serious altitude issues. And now we spend like 3 nights there at that height at 11,000 feet. And pretty much 100% of people that are coming on our trips, like 100 a season, everybody makes it. There's minor headaches, minor issues, but everybody's a lot safer. And that pressure that builds up in your body, you're just eliminating probably one of the more dangerous things that can hurt you when you go to altitude. So by coming in this west side of Kili, this is just a picture of some of our guides, staff, and we bring them boots and shoes and equipment every time we go there. People are donating stuff all the time, so they're super happy with us because they can't really get anything on the ground in Tanzania. If they get it, it's cheap, it's a knockoff, it's not legitimate gear. So we're constantly bringing in equipment for our guys. We have the same staff now on the ground for 8 years, and our head guide from Kili was just with us in Colorado. and he toured Aspen and Vale, where we live, and loved it. I think he's tempted to step into our world a little more often. But our guys on the ground are phenomenal, and they do an amazing job for us. We've taken them to the Himalayas, and our head guide, Athmani, wants to climb Everest, so that's his goal. So he's like on this mission now to see if he can. I think he'd be the second person from Tanzania to climb Everest. So that's his goal right now, and he's getting after it. But to have that lofty goal, you got to have people behind you. You got to have the dreams, and most of these guys don't have that. So we're trying to provide them with consistent trips. We're trying to run, 20 trips a year to Kilimanjaro to make sure that we have them, working for us and we're working for them. And they do a phenomenal job. As anyone that's been there, experiencing the local people, they do a phenomenal job. So from the west side of Kilimanjaro, coming in on the Lamosha route, we start at, these are in meters, but you're starting at 7,000 feet. You can see some of the times on these, going to the top in 26 hours. I'm not sure that's at my level, but somebody is doing that. And local people, when they acclimatize, and even Westerners, when they acclimatize well, people have gone to the top, and like from early on in the trip all the way into the top and back in 10 hours. So it is doable, but the acclimatization of people to be able to do it at that pace, you got to be there for weeks, months in advance, and you got to be training like a professional athlete to do that. But we spend, as I said, 8 days on the mountain, and there's a lot of distance to cover. You can see to the summit, 47, and then you have to come off the summit all the way back down to the gate, which is 26 miles. So it is a long distance to cover, and having that much time gives you the time to shorten the days, cover less distance. And it's not about the distance that you're walking in a straight line. It's about the elevation that you're going up and down. You should never be going over 2,500 feet on any given day at altitude. So we're coming in at 7,000 feet. We can drive to that point. We could drive to Vale tomorrow, which we will, and we'll be at 8,000 feet. That's okay. We can, people might have a minor headache. But if I was to take you to the top of Kilimanjaro and we stayed there from sea level, we wouldn't survive more than 24 hours. So if we went from here to the top of Kili, and in 24 hours, you'd be dead. If I took you to the top of Everest, you'd be dead in 5 minutes. So altitude is cumulative. So the higher you go, the worse it gets. So people go, oh, I've been to 10,000 feet in the Rockies or in Colorado. Well, that's not a big deal. It's about, can you go, if you were to go to 10,000 feet on one go, that's fine. If you were to 14,000 feet in one go, well, that's highly dangerous. If you go to 17,000 feet and it's only a little bit higher, you would be dead very quickly. So that it's like almost, I was in Kathmandu when the earthquake hit, and those buildings were rocking and everything was all over the place, and buildings were coming down. But the Richter scale is very similar. When you get to the 7.8 or 8 on a Richter scale, it's potentially lethal. A 6, on the Richter scale, it's all right. You'll feel a 5 maybe, or a 6, but a 7 or an 8 is like exponentially worse. And the same with altitude. The higher you go, the worse it gets. And that last 1,000 feet on Everest, your body knows it. And even on the last part of Kilimanjaro, unacclimatized at 19,000 feet, your body knows it. Everything above 18,000 feet is literally the death zone. So whatever you've read about 26,000 feet and 8,000 meters and people dying on Everest, it starts at 18,000 feet. Nothing lives, nothing survives, no animals, no shrubbery, no greenery, and no life above 18,000 feet. So once you step into that zone above 18,000 feet, you're really playing Russian roulette with your body. Your body either adapts to a point, it gets you up there and you get back down, or it doesn't. So that's the risk with Kilimanjaro that's really, really dangerous, is that last section of the mountain. Like when we're getting people up there, we're getting them on the top. I'm taking some pictures and then we're like, get down below that danger zone. Get back below 18,000 feet as quickly as possible. But if you spend less time going there and you don't have the acclimatization and it's taking hours for people to get there, well then the exposure to that risk and that danger is massive. Like on Everest, when people go up to the top and they spend like 12, 14 hours just getting to the top, well, they've just got themselves into a position where they've just wasted so much energy, they've no oxygen in their body, and they haven't got the chance to get back down again. And even that short amount of time, hours make all the difference. So like 2 or 3 hours on the top of Everest, in and around that top section, that's why people are dying. It's about trying to get up to the top and have the energy to get back down. If your body isn't acclimatized or acclimated, well, then you're risking the amount of time that you're risking your life, really. And we see it all the time. We see people on the top of Kili, keeled over, people spending 16, 18 hours trying to just get to the top. And then by the time they do it, they're just wasted. And we're, putting people on oxygen and literally carrying them down the mountain. So it's definitely something to think about if you're ever thinking of going there. And it's something to know, is that altitude is dangerous above these heights. And you cannot survive, you cannot live above 18,000 feet long term. It's impossible. Everyone will die. A little bit morbid. Don't ever go there. Just go and see it. Back down as quickly as you can. But that's the reality. And a lot of people just don't know that above 18,000 feet, it's a dangerous place to be. And like when we're climbing Everest, we're there for 10 weeks. So by the time we get to the base of the mountain at 17 and a half, well, we need those extra 6 weeks for acclimatization. Like here, if we don't acclimatize well lower down, we won't be able to perform well higher up. So what we do is, as I said, we spend more time 11,000 feet, 12,000 feet, 13,000 feet, and we go up and we go drop down lower, and we go back up again and we drop back down. And that's the best way to acclimatize. And not all the routes on Kilimanjaro have that. They don't have the up and the down. So by coming in from the west, we can circumnavigate the whole mountain, which gets us up over things and down. Most of the other routes are just like straight up. So this route on the west side of Kilimanjaro, to me, is the best way to acclimatize. It's also the less traveled route because it's dirt roads to get in there. It's way off in the distance. It's only been open for about 15 years. The other benefit of coming in from this side, there's actually road access. So there's emergency evacuation off the mountain on the west side of Kilimanjaro, and there's no other option for that on any other side of the mountain. So you've got a road that comes up at 13,000 feet. So if you need to get off the mountain, it's the only way to do it. So this is personally just the least traveled route, best acclimatization, and it takes you up past all the 3 volcanoes. So you're kind of getting in more of an experience traveling on Kilimanjaro, this kind of route in through the mountain. So this is our setup on the mountain. We have big dome tents, big mess tent. My light doesn't work, but this is our dome tent, and then we use mountain equipment tents or mountain hardware tents. On the mountain, we have 2 people in the tent, and then we have a mess tent, and we have games and cards and all sorts of stuff goes on in there at night, keeping all the locals awake. And usually when you're with a bunch of Irish people, they're trying to smuggle alcohol in, so kind of have to manage the Irish people a little bit differently than everybody else. Because definitely you don't want to be drinking on the way up. Whatever about the way down, that's other people's decision. But yeah, we have a lot of fun here. The camps are set up during the day, they get set up for lunch, and they get set up in the evening. So you're getting a 3-course meal during the morning, 3-course meal for lunch, and then another 3-course meal for dinner. And it's important. You might think you go away with extra, some people say you lose weight. I don't know if I lose any weight on Kilimanjaro. There's like tons of food, and it's all prepared. We got a chef that just does an amazing job preparing all the food. But the route up the mountain through the rainforest is pretty spectacular. There's a couple of sections where, it's kind of mind-blowing to think how they carve their way through these routes. There's dense forest, from way down here all the way up to this section. How do they even, manage to get through these different sections? But it is pretty spectacular. And when you get to, 13,000 feet, the tree line ends. So you really kind of come out of the tree line and you can really see where you are. on the west side, you've all these rolling hills coming off Kilimanjaro as you kind of work your way through. The route actually comes through this section around the back, and then you wind up here, and then you come up along this ridge line. So amazing scenery on the west side of Kilimanjaro. When you're on any of the other routes, you're kind of enclosed in the rainforest quite a bit, so you don't really get to see kind of the scale and the different sides of the mountain as well as you do on this side. But when you come up on the west side too, we have this place called the Shira Plateau. And the Shira Plateau Shira is one of the volcanoes on Kilimanjaro. So there's 3 volcanoes. There's Shira, and then there's this Kibo, and then there's Mwenzi in the background. But what this plateau has that nowhere else has, it just has this amazing section where you can just walk straight across it. The elevation gain that you're getting is like 900 feet right across it, and we spent 2 nights there. So by the time we come up out of the rainforest, we're at 11,000 feet, and all the research that's been done on altitude over the last decade suggests more time at that height. If you can spend more time at 11,000 feet, your body's going to acclimatize better. And that, they've been studying it on Everest since 2007, and the biggest recommendation they said for any altitude climb is to spend more time at that height. So what we do is we spend like 3 nights going up and down and up and down, and then across this plateau where we get more acclimatization. That extra 24 hours or 48 hours of your body creating red blood cells to carry oxygen is absolutely vital. So you can do that on a place where there's there's not so much up. You kind of have a flat run at it. So it's nice. And this side of the mountain is just absolutely spectacular. As we come in the west, we're traversing all the way to the other side of the mountain. Doesn't look so big from Shira Camp 1 at 11,000 feet. But this is the kind of route that we're taking. Cutting across this side, underneath the mountain, and all the way around to the other side. But this plateau gives that extra acclimatization that we're looking for higher on the mountain. So from one side of the plateau to this side, this shows you the Shira volcano. And the Shira volcano is in here. You can kind of see the volcano here. The rim is on this side and then goes up to the Shira. It's called the Shira Cathedral. So this is the first volcano on Kilimanjaro. And then it hasn't erupted in 150,000 years. So hopefully it won't happen next month, but we'll see. If it happens, it's bad luck on me, but it is stunning, an amazing place. This big, massive plateau that runs off the west side of Kilimanjaro. You don't see it when you look at those those kind of pictures of the mountain. That's just looking from one side, but off to the west, there's this big, expansive area. And this was the original volcano, the Shira volcano. So at sunset, amazing pictures. We're camped out in deck chairs, just watching the sun go down. And as the sun goes down, definitely the temperatures shift massively, and it's actually colder on this side of the mountain and wetter if it's in rainy season. This side gets a lot more rain, and it's colder. Before the sun comes up from the other side, it takes a long time to heat up on this side of the mountain. But we do get some amazing sunsets over these jagged peaks. So this is a kind of a zoomed out look. This is the Shira volcano on this side. This is the big Shira plateau that comes across here. This is a mountain called Mount Meru, which is near Arusha on the other side. But it gives you kind of a view of this western side of Kilimanjaro, which is pretty special. So I was just pointing out this Shira volcano, and we come all the way from this side. You can even see some of the tents that are here before we continue our way up the mountain. So at this point, we're at 13,000 feet, and we've already spent one night in the rainforest, another night on the plateau, and then a second night on the plateau. So we've had 3 nights at this height, or at the 13,000 mark, but we were able to go up to 13,000, drop back down again on the plateau over here, so we can get up high and we can sleep low, and then we can get back up to this camp, climb a little bit higher, and go back down and sleep. And the two things I was talking about, you know, the acclimatization or the acclimation to the low oxygen is absolutely critical, and the physical element we'll talk about towards the end. But this is just all gradual. Nothing too challenging. It's all about pacing, it's all about hydration, and it's all about taking our time. We're trying to go from point A to point B, doing as little as possible. So when you're preparing for something like this, you're trying to get yourself fit, strong, able to handle pressure and stress. When you're there, you're trying to do the total opposite. Trying to take it easy, trying to like stumble across and have conversations and drink 5 liters of water and go to the toilet in the bushes every 10 minutes. That's what you're doing when you're there. When you're here, it's a little bit different, and that's a whole other conversation which we'll have towards the end. But this acclimatization process is just so important to be able to experience the mountain properly. You want to be up here, you want to see those sunsets, you want to be immersed in the experience, and you don't want to be up there getting sick, lying in a tent, watching other people sick and miserable on the mountain. So that once we've kind of gone through this process, usually by day 3 or day 4, I'm seeing, you know, minor stomach issues because your stomach is being suppressed. It's shutting down a little bit, and your stomach is getting smaller. Your brain is actually swelling because of the lack of oxygen. So if you're going under the ocean, it would be the other way around. But at altitude, your brain is swelling. Sometimes to the point of cutting off your vision, which I've seen. If anyone was here for my Everest talk, one of my friends was on the summit ridge and went blind and almost pulled us off the mountain. So that can happen, and it can happen at any time, especially higher on the mountain. We've even seen people go to the Himalayas and not get past 8,000 feet, just because their bodies aren't able to handle it. So you definitely understanding how altitude works, knowing how to pick the right amount of days on the mountain is super, super important if you're trying to go and climb this mountain. So from the Shira Plateau, we're heading up into this kind of higher zone. You can see there's no grass growing, there's no trees, it's just rock. And see all these lava flows that are coming off the mountain all the way down, you know, miles and miles of this lava flows. It's kind of, as I said, it's a geological giant. It's just mind-blowing to see all just the different types of terrain. But literally from 13,000 feet to 15,000 feet, everything is gone. So up to 13,000 feet, you know, there's grass and there's trees and, you know, things can live and survive. But then, you know, the 15,000 feet, nothing is living. Above 18,000 feet, absolutely nothing. You'll see, you know, little funguses and shrubbery and things, but really nothing big. There's not enough oxygen for you know, to sustain anything. So as you can see closely on this, you can see the trail goes through this section, all the way through here. Just miles and miles of terrain as you're kind of crossing the mountain. You can see people carrying equipment all the way up here. And our goal is to get to this point on this day, the lava tower at 15,000 feet. So again, we're going from 13 all the way up to 15 at the lava tower. And that will take, you know, it'll take 4 hours to do that. And we try and get up to this point at the lava tower before dropping back down. And usually we see issues of altitude here. The first time I came here, I didn't even make it to this height. I was on my second day, and I'm at 15,000 feet, and I was stumbling around. I couldn't even walk, and I remember just, like, the guy just said, just go down the route. And I just stumbled down the route. I was lucky I didn't fall over and hit my head on something, but I was just vomiting, getting sick. A terrible experience. But we're doing this on day 4. So those extra 48 hours, it's enough time to kind of get the body at least used to altitude, create those red blood cells to give me the chance of being successful. Because no one can acclimatize. Like for us, I grew up at sea level, so just outside Dublin in Ireland. And for me to go to Vail and live at 7,000 feet or 8,000 feet, it takes 5 years to acclimatize. So it takes 5 years for me to come back. So every time I go home, which is every other month or wherever I go, or here, every time I jump back up again, my body has to readapt. Now it's fine, I can go there and I'm fine. But I mean, it takes that long for your body to readjust and to acclimatize. And above 10,000 feet, really we can never acclimatize or acclimate to the lack of oxygen. So that teaches us that we're just allowed into this region. Our bodies are producing more red blood cells to carry more oxygen, like Lance Armstrong did, but he was doing it a different way. But that's what we're doing essentially. But we're only kind of getting enough, or some people aren't getting enough, and there's ways to manage that. But the only real way to manage it is to take more time. So you can still see people at this elevation get in trouble and get altitude sickness. And now it's becoming more pronounced, more headaches, more vomiting. Probably 50% of people have something wrong with them, whether it's congestion or something wrong with their stomach or their head. So it is important to understand how you personally adapt to the lack of oxygen to really understand how to do this correctly. So that's why I'm emphasizing spending more time getting your body used to it. So we head up to the lava tower, 15,000 feet. We set up our tents. We serve you a 3-course meal with nice soup and beautiful food, and then we descend down this rocky terrain all the way through to this Barranco camp. And we have there's amazing trees, ground cell trees, up high on Kilimanjaro, and they're only found in this kind of climatic zone at this elevation, at that point on Kili. And this kind of Barranco Valley, one of these valleys that runs down off Kilimanjaro, it's quite amazing. And there's just hundreds of these big ground cell trees popping up. Quite amazing. Probably my favorite place on Kilimanjaro is this kind of Barranco Valley. We have the Barranco Wall, where you can actually see closely, if you look on the other TV too, at this big rock at the bottom. Just to the right of that is where you climb up. And it looks quite steep. If you can see the trail, you're good. The bigger screen would be nice, but this shows you the kind of route that you're taking up. And it looks quite vertical. I think a lot of people that think about climbing Kilimanjaro, this is something that scares them about doing it. But to me, after we do it, I think everyone wants to do it again. It's a fun trip. It's really fun. A little bit of scrambling. It's a really interesting climb back up. And at this point, people are starting to feel better. They've had more time to adapt. They're getting closer to the mountain. They can see the top. They're in this beautiful valley. You arrive in and all the porters are dancing and singing because you've just gone up 2,500 feet and dropped down 2,000 down into this camp called Barranco. It's a really, really cool place. And at night, just the views of the mountain, stars rolling over, even down into the valley. Beautiful, beautiful place. Probably one of my favorite campsites on the whole mountain. So from here, as I said, we have this Barranco Wall. You walk up in the morning, that was the big rock down here, and we start shooting up the side of this hill. The summit is only that far away, but and people are always, can we not just go now? And, the sign said, it's only like 12 hours. It's like, no. It would not be advisable to do it from there. Although some people do. Some people go from here all the way to the high camp if they got less days, and then all the way to the summit, and then sometimes all the way to the gate. So if you want to do that, you definitely want to be in top physical shape to be able to do out those distances and do big long days and then do it again the next day. So this is an amazing place. We walk up towards the Barranco Wall. We have videos on our website of just doing this. But it's kind of fun. You a little bit of scrambling here. Some sections, there's always a guide, to help you cross it. There's some drop-offs. It's kind of a fun just climb up from the camp where you walk across under that rock Most of it's just walking. You know, there's maybe a couple of sections where you have to down climb a little bit. You have to scramble using your hands. But the majority of it is just kind of steep walking. So the most important thing, even throughout the whole trip, and we kind of start doing it at this point, is really getting people into that kind of slow pace. Because the difference between when we're climbing and trekking, there's people are not used to walking at a certain pace. They keep on trying to go at their own pace, and then all of a sudden, they can't breathe and out of breath, and then they're going to struggle, and that's when mistakes happen. If you're not in control of what you're doing, and that's anything in life, you're going to get in trouble. So trying to be in control of your breathing, in control of how you're moving, what you're doing with your hands and feet. One slip and you're in trouble. So we're trying to coach people into that, just taking their time, slow and steady, one step, and then figure out where the next step is going. If you try and do this too fast, all you're doing is burning too much energy, pushing yourself to a point where you can't recover. And if anyone does any sort of training or exercise, you'll know if you go fast and then slow and fast and slow, there's only a small amount of time you can actually do that. You can only do interval type training for short periods of time, like if you're playing soccer or whatever that, I grew up playing soccer, so, it's short bursts all the time, and you're, after a while, you're just done in. If we want to walk for 14 hours, step after step, well, we've got to do it at a certain pace and control our breathing and keep our heart rates at a certain level, because if we can manage our heart rates correctly, that means we can last longer. So that's all, I'm starting to talk about the physical preparation, but that's what it's all about. Other than the acclimatization or acclimation, it's about pacing, it's about breathing, and we have to control that heart rate to make sure that it's kept at a certain level, because if we don't do that, we're going to burn out too quickly. And when we need the energy higher up because we're in risk, we need to be able to get out. We need that extra energy to get us out of there. So pacing, relaxing, taking our time. If we're trying to push all the time, we're going to, it'll be game over quickly. The key is to take more time, take our time, so that when we need it, when we need that energy, we have it. And even on Everest, when we were there 72 days, trust me, I needed it. There was lots of days of relaxing, but when I needed it higher up, and I needed to push myself to get out of that danger zone, I needed that extra energy. And it was good that I didn't waste it on the way up. So when you get to the top of that Barranca wall, you can see a group of people sitting out. It can be quite cool in the morning, probably freezing on the ground. The river, as you cross over, it can be freezing. And then, the minute the sun comes up and the sun comes out strong, that there's no protection. The UV rays at 14,000 feet, quite punishing. And if anyone's been to Colorado or, being at altitude, you get burnt up there. It doesn't burn your skin. It kind of tars it. And the less protection, the more danger it's doing. So we're always trying to keep people, even arms and legs, well sun-creamed up, out of the sun. You can see a couple of people in T-shirts, but you really want to be kept away from the sun. People think that, when they get sick or something, I had bad food or I drank bad water. Usually it's the sun. It gives people diarrhea really quick, because your body is then fighting to recover. I'm not enticing you to go there by all these things, but that's the reality, and that's, that's what happens to a lot of people. They get up there, they get too much sun, they get sick, and it's the sun that's a big challenge for a lot of people. So trying to stay out of that sun, super important. But at this point, I would say at this height, 14,000 feet, on a regular day in Kilimanjaro, the temperature could be up to, depends, 60 degrees. It can be really, really warm. It can be freezing at night, and then, really, really quickly the sun comes up and it's super warm, and you're sweating on the trail in a T-shirt and a pair of shorts, but you were wearing a full down jacket that morning because it was freezing cold. So the temperatures vary up and down, up and down, and up and down, and that becomes really important mentally higher up, because when you're climbing in the dark and it's freezing cold, the sun is coming. That bright sun is going to come up and it's going to be back up warm again. Where on bigger mountains, you don't have that luxury. It can be freezing the whole time. So if you get cold, you're going to stay cold. But on this mountain, sun comes up, quite warm. sun isn't out, depending on the time of year, temperatures cool right off again. And you see people putting jackets back on. But at this point, they're having a good time. Those extra days, that time extra up there, makes all the difference as you kind of traverse and climb the mountain. The benefit of doing up and down is that you get better acclimatization. The downside is it takes its toll on your body. Going up and down things, your knees, your legs get put under more pressure. And you can see here, we got to go across to the same elevation as this camp, but we got to drop way down into a valley to get back up the other side to get to that side. So these are the challenges with going up and down and up and down. And that's where that physical preparation comes in. We're encouraging people, if you're going to walk with a backpack on, and there's going to be 3 liters of water, and you got a rain gear, and you got jackets and clothing and snacks, you're going to have 11 pounds in your backpack. Well, we want people to be training, building up to double that. So if you can get your legs in a position to handle more weight, well, then you're going to have, when you take off the weight at sea level, or we're at 800 feet here, that's the critical element of preparation. So when I was climbing Everest, we were going to carry 20 kilos. So I started building my legs up to carrying double that. So when I took off the weight, my legs were able to handle the pressure a lot more. I was able to do single leg squats and hold weight in my hand and do all these things and get myself out of trouble. So when I'm training for Kilimanjaro, and I'm going to be carrying 11 pounds in my backpack every day for 8 days, well, I want to make sure that I've conditioned my body to carry double that. Don't have to do it. It's from doing it for a long time, that's probably the best piece of advice I could give anyone going to climb Kilimanjaro. You're not going to run a marathon, so running is going to be of no use. You're going to have a backpack on and you're going to be walking up and down hills. We got some hills here, but there's ways to do that in the gym too, on a Stairmaster, lunges, squats, getting your legs, your back, your core strong, that you can get yourself up and down this mountain. And that's the biggest challenge physically. People think, when I climbed Everest, my resting heart rate was 38. But when I was at 26,000 feet, my resting heart rate was 120. So at altitude, because the body is working harder, the heart is, pumping more oxygen around the body, means it's working more. It's working to recover the muscles. It's working hard. So here, if you haven't put your body under pressure here, how is it going to handle the pressure on the side of a mountain? Well, your muscles are not going to be conditioned. Your body's not going to be ready. You're going to start feeling pains in your back and your shoulders. You have to train specifically for what you're going to do. So there is ways to do it, and we're always happy to talk about that in detail. But that's probably the best. If I was going to say to anyone, what should you do? Get up and down hills and build up to carrying double the weight. I'm not saying put 22 pounds on your back straight away and do your knees in, but over time, as you build up slowly, it's like weightlifters. They don't, throw 100 kilos on a bench. They start with 10, then they build up to 15, they build up to 20, and your body gets conditioned to do what you tell it to do. So, as you put on more weight, well, now you're just teaching your muscles how to perform under more pressure. So that's probably the biggest piece of advice I could give, because there's lots of up and down and up and down and up and down. And then every day we usually get in the afternoon. People like to clean up. We have fresh water, we have food and popcorn and drinks and all that stuff. And then we hang out in this kind of mess tent, usually all evening. Some people bring in appropriate music and inappropriate games, and we try to keep them in their own tents and away from everyone else. And then most people come in and just hang out, play cards, play games, just enjoy it, trying to relax and get to know other people. Because we have people coming from all over the world on our trips. Like next week we have a trip, and they're from Hong Kong and Ireland. And last time I was on a trip in the Himalayas, there was somebody from Hungary, Poland, Bulgaria, or all over the world, the States, Ireland. So all sorts of interesting characters that you're going to kind of meet along the way. But it's nice to have, nice chairs, nice place to sit, plenty of food on, and the guys are kind of relaxing in the evening, playing cards and preparing for the summit. So we're on the mountain 6 days. The terrain is the same now. It's that kind of lunar landscape as we're kind of, as I said, we're coming from one side and we're continuing the journey up Kilimanjaro. And on the last day before we go to the top, we make a 3-hour jaunt. Just a 3-hour walk up to this high camp to give us a launching pad to the top. Now, some people do that in less days. They put 2 days together, a 4-hour day and a 3-hour day, and they do a 7-hour day to get up to the high camp, and then they push for the summit and back down again. And for us, I think it's just, it can be done, but just having a nice, easy day before you have to go on a big, big push to the summit, it's nice to have that day. And it's just amazing landscape as you walk around the base of Kilimanjaro and you come up to the high camp. And the high camp is positioned at 15,000 feet. So from 15,000 feet, because you've been to 15,000 already, we've been up to 15, dropped back down, come back up to 13, moved around and slept at that height. And then we move 2,000 feet, which is less than that 2,500 feet mark that I said you should not cross on any given day. So you're going up 2,000 feet, get up to this high camp, and then you're going from 15 all the way to 19, 3. So you're going up like 4,000 feet in one go. So it's pretty high to do. Usually we do it, we start at midnight. The weather can be above freezing, it can be below freezing, it can be snowy, it can be warm, it can be windy, it can be anything. You never know what you're going to get on the summit night. It could be 0 degrees Fahrenheit, it could be hover around 20 degrees, it could be up as warm as 30 degrees. So it can be, the temperature can be anywhere, and you kind of have to be prepared for anything that's thrown at you. Normally, if I'm going to say on the 20-odd climbs that I've been up there, it usually starts at 15,000 feet at midnight. It's usually about, it's usually around 30 degrees, 35 even, so quite warm. You come out of the tent and you got like 5 layers on and you're like, oh, let's take off a few layers, and you know, it's getting too hot. So over time, as you walk up during the night, it gets super cold. So it can start at like 30, but then it can drop down very, very quickly. To, you know, the temperature changes 3 degrees every 1,000 feet anyway. So the temperature is going to drop as you're going higher. Plus, the closer you get to dawn is going to be the coldest. So you're kind of walking up into the cold, but you're warming your body up as you go. The key is to spend as little time stopping. So what we do is we go, if we're going to take 7 or 8 hours to get to the top, we're going to stop every hour on the hour. Now, if you want to go to the bathroom, you know, you can just step off the trail. We're walking at this pace, so it's easy to catch up. So we're really just not walking very fast. We're taking our time. The key is to keep moving and not to be stopping. If you're walking and then hunched over and you're tired and you can't move and your hands are going cold and your feet are going cold, that's going to be a problem. The key is to keep moving slowly, slowly, all the way. We stop for an hour, we drink some water, we have some snacks, everything is close to us. If it's good views, when there's a little bit of light in the sky, you know, take some pictures as you're walking, and then we keep on moving. And to go those 4,000 feet, you know, when we're in Colorado and we're going from 8,000 feet to 10,000, it takes us like an hour and 20 minutes, or let's say an hour and 30 minutes. So, you know, if we were to do another 2,000 feet, we could probably do it in 3 hours. But up here, we don't want to burn out. If we get to the top and we're like, all right, we got to the top, but we're done in, and we've no energy to get back down, we're going to be in trouble. And that's what happens to a lot of people. They go out too fast, too hard. They're not breathing correctly. They're not getting enough oxygen into their bodies. And they're like constantly breathing in through their mouth, where if they just took that full lung capacity and in through their nose and out through their mouths and just get into a rhythm. When I do that correctly, I feel 100 times better. When I'm having to work up there because I'm walking up because people are falling asleep, which happens in the dark, it's harder for me to climb the mountain, but I'm up and down, watching people all the time, making sure everybody is safe with us, mentally functioning as they walk up in the dark. But it is a super hard day. It's a massive day. It's a 14-hour day in reality because you're taking 7 or 8 hours to the top. We spend a little bit of time on the top, and then we continue back down to where we started at 15,000 feet, take 2 hours rest, and then we have to continue lower down the mountain to get back down to a lower camp. So I've done it in 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours. Most groups would be a 14-hour day. So you're up all night, tired, as you stumble your way up. It's absolutely amazing as the light comes up. Depends on the time of year you're there. It can be, as I said, there can be snow, there can be no snow. But you're walking, whether the clouds are at 10,000 feet or 16,000 feet, or there's multiple layers of clouds. It's absolutely stunning as you kind of walk your way up the side of the mountain. This gives you an idea. The camp is way down here. And you've kind of come along this section and you're just zigzagging your way up the mountain. This is where the camp is, just down here. And you're kind of moving our way up, and you can see, you know, the clouds are back down at 10,000 feet. These big lava flows coming off the mountain, just running off the mountain. Absolutely spectacular. Places where boulders have just been like thrown out of the volcano and just left there. Hard to take in when you're climbing up there and you're focused on every breath and every step. But, you know, when I'm up there, it's just absolutely incredible. The scenery is just absolutely breathtaking. And then when that light comes up, because the sun is coming up from that east side of the mountain, so it's coming up right behind you, and you're zigzagging your way up the side of the mountain. It takes a long time. And when when the light comes out here, it kind of gives you a second wind. You kind of get your, lease of life. You know you're like two hours to the kind of crater rim, and you know that then it's only another 45 minutes to the top. So you're kind of pushing your way up the side of this mountain, but you notice when you hit that 18,000 mark, or like 5,500 meters, I can see the difference in people. It becomes far more challenging. Every step that people are taking, they're like fighting it. And yes, they've been walking for 6 hours, 7 hours, but I can see the lack of oxygen on people, and that's when I have to kind of kick into my gear, is managing people high on the mountain, because it becomes critical at this point to make sure we can get people up, get them their pictures that they wanted in whatever outfit they wanted, or their banners, or whoever they were raising money for, and get them down the mountain. So it is amazing, but it's also important to get up and get down. You can see the terrain, it's not so easy. It's not straightforward. It's not on the way down too, if there's no snow. It's like almost walking in deeper snow. It's like sand, really. And you can put your feet in, you're kind of skiing your way down a little bit. But then certain sections you can't. You have to turn and twist, and every step down is a 4,000 step foot down drop all the way down, back down to the high camp. So it does take its toll. But for a brief moment, we can enjoy the summit and the scenery high in the mountain. This is a friend of mine, Eamon, from Ireland, actually. He was 72 when he climbed Kili with us. He was one of the guys that made it, and one of the guys in their 20s didn't. So he flew up the side of the mountain, probably the least complaining person in my life. He just walked up the side of the mountain, got it done, and walked back down again. But from Stella Point, you can see the top. So when you hit this kind of rim, you can see that the crater is like this. It also goes around the other side. The top is right over here. So when you get to this point at 18,800 feet, you're really close, and you can see it. And it's about 45 minutes of slow walking as we wind our way up. And this is Stella Point on a little bit of a colder day. But you can see the route. It just goes up along. You can see some people. Well, that's not. The people kind of are scattered along this route all the way to the summit. And it's absolutely spectacular looking back down the route. The Stella Point is over here. And now Mwenzi, the third volcano, kind of pops up from behind the clouds. And that can be just spectacular. The sunrise is coming right up, sometimes right behind this mountain. And just the scenery is like I'm not sure I could have seen anything quite like it. Especially when there's clouds and lighting. It's just a really amazing experience. And then at this point, you know you're going to make it. Everyone's like, yeah, we're going to do it, we're going to do it. 10 hours later, it's a different situation, but at this moment in time, they're focused on the top. And this is truly special. There's no place, even in the Himalayas or the Alps or anywhere in the world, where you can stand on the side of a mountain and have nothing but cloud. There's nothing to impede the view. Sometimes the clouds are a little bit higher, sometimes they're super low, but whatever you're looking at, the scenery of Kilimanjaro, there's really nothing like it. Really special, high on the mountain. But as I said, it takes about 45 minutes from that Stella Point. You come round a few corners. It feels like forever. For some people, as they're asking when are we getting there, how long, I'm like, shut up and we'll get there. It's around the corner and just keep going. But yeah, when you see this iconic sign, you know you're there, and then we just walk straight up to it. You definitely don't want to be on that right-hand side. A couple of people have fallen off at different times, mostly from altitude, and nobody spotted that they were altitude sick, and that can happen. People can be talking, and they can be in a different planet. So we have to really keep an eye on people as they're up here, because anything, as I said, above 18,000 feet, anything can happen. You know, when we're on Everest, there was people going from standing up to unconscious in a 15-minute period. So anything can happen in that kind of danger zone. So we really have to make sure we're managing everyone, get the pictures done, and get out of there. This was a group we had this year, and there was like 19 spread out from, there was like 20 to 65, I think, and everybody made it. There was, when I was talking about people falling asleep, there was one guy on this trip who was just like falling asleep, and I'm putting like glucose in his mouth and rubbing it in his gums and giving him sweets, and he's like stumbling up, and then the minute the sun comes out, he's like, oh, I'm here. And mentally, it's, I think, just, yeah, in the dark and with the lack of oxygen, your body does funny things. You can be talking funny, you can be acting funny, but that's why we're there, to make sure that we can spot those things early. But it is an amazing experience, stand on the top. Everyone sees this picture, but they never see this picture. The other side of the sign. So when you're, you see pictures of the top of Kili, but when you're standing on it, that's what you're looking at. So you can look back down all the way to Stella Point, which is here. I can see the other sign, and that you can see people arriving in, and then it kind of drops over that crest down. You hit that Stella Point, and then you're back down the side of the mountain. But yeah, it's an amazing view as the sun is kind of coming right up in your face. Especially, not for me anymore, but because I'm working, but I mean, when you're there and you can have your moment on the top, you know, that scene is just a special time for people to achieve something so special. But then you have to get all the way down. As I said, all the way back to Stella Point. Depends, it can take 20 minutes, it can take a little bit less. But our goal is to get people down fast, and we stay together, we move as a unit, we get everyone down the mountain. We do have oxygen with us, we do have all that stuff, and we have one-to-one. So if there was 10 people on the trip, there would be like 10 guides there with us. So we would have one-to-one as we kind of come back down the mountain, just in case, you know, your bag needed to be carried or you needed assistance or whatever it may be, because we want to get you down back to here and then down the mountain fast. So we get to Stella Point, and then you can see Mwenzi in the background, this other third volcano, and you can see the route all the way back down. Steep, 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 all the way down to the high camp. It's a tiring walk, probably the most, out of all the trips we go on, I go to the Himalayas 2-3 times a year, and we just came back from Machu Picchu where they had a teacher strike and annoyed the hell out of us. But this, you know, coming down here is the hardest thing I think we do, or I do. It just takes about 3 hours. It's a long slog. You've been up all night, you're tired. You're getting back down at like 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and you're kind of tired. You're ready to jump in your tent, and literally you do. You fall into the tent. Most of the time I just fall asleep for an hour. Then I've got to get up, pack up all my stuff, get everybody out, get everyone have to have lunch, and then we got to continue down to 10,000 feet. So in one day, you're going from 19,000 feet all the way to 10,000 feet. Now, there's options to stay a little bit higher, but to me, because you got another day after that to get out, it's better to drop down as low as you can. You'll sleep better, you'll recover better, and you'll feel better. So we just continue walking down the mountain. The next day you wake up and you get to see what you achieved as you've kind of walked down 10,000 feet, 11,000 feet, all the way to 13,000 feet in 2 days. You've come down the side of the mountain. So it definitely takes its toll on the knees and the body, and that's where that kind of conditioning comes in. If I train with my backpack on, I've done all that work, and I've taken my time going up, normally I'll feel quite good. I'll feel tired, and I won't want to feel like I've got to get back on the bus and go back again with another group the next day. But I mean, I can do it if I take my time. And I've just learned over the years that 8 days on the mountain, more time preparing, makes the difference. You know, all the safety equipment and all the food and whatever, all that's important. But those two things, you can see that you have to go from 19,000 feet to 10,000 feet and then continue back down to lower elevation. You've got to come down to 7,000 feet in 2 days. So it's quite challenging and not to be underestimated. Now, you can take more time on the way down. There's no reason why you can't do 9 days or 10 days. On the mountain, the challenge with Kilimanjaro now is that it just costs a lot of money. So the permits, if you add it all in with the new taxes they have, are about $150 per person per day. So if you go on a 5-day trip versus an 8-day trip, or even a 5-day versus a 10-day, there's going to be a massive chunk of change that you're going to pay in park fees. Plus, you're going to have 40 staff on the mountain, plus all the food and all the equipment. It adds up. So you're going to see prices that are, you know, $2,500 to some of them are up to 11,000. But I mean, an average trip, you know, 3,500 is probably around the mark you're going to pay. So you're going to pay $400 to have all those staff on the mountain, pay all the permits, and climb Kilimanjaro. There are cheap options, but as I tried to explain, they don't always pay off. And the statistics on Kilimanjaro, 42% of people are making it. So that's 50% of everyone that's going there, only 50% are making it. And to me, that comes down to those two things. Spending less days on the mountain, if you do that, you're limiting your chance of success, and then just people not coming with that physical preparation and training. Do those two things, and Kilimanjaro can be done by anyone. I think somebody just climbed it at 88 this week, was it? So anything is possible. I have a friend of mine who I went for some coaching before I went to Everest, and it was all psychological, and he had this goal that he said he was, at 90, he was going to climb Everest. So I think he can do it. He thinks he can do it. My new philosophy is that if I know I can do it, then I don't need to do it. So I think that's possibly a better one. But yeah, so I don't have to go and do it 50 times because I know I can do it. But it is an amazing experience, an amazing place. There's lots to do in Tanzania outside of Kilimanjaro, like safaris and Ngorongoro Crater or Lake Manyara or Tarangire. There's Serengeti's right there too. And Zanzibar for people who want to relax on the beach. It is an amazing place to visit. The people are very special, and it's definitely worth doing. If Kilimanjaro looks pretty small there, but that was taking off from the airport at the end. But if anyone's interested in going or interested in other information, get on our website, check us out. We'd love to talk to you, and yeah, thanks for listening. And if you will, I know we're going to do some questions, but if anyone has any other questions, you can come up to me afterwards. I'll hang around. My wife Laura has been on Kilimanjaro, so she has been up there too. So just feel free to come and ask some questions now, because I think we've got 30 minutes, so I think we got a microphone coming around, and I'll happily answer your questions.
Well, first, thanks for a tremendous talk. I know that crowding can be a serious, even a lethal problem on Everest. To what extent is crowding a problem on Kilimanjaro?
Good question. So a lot of places around the world now, and Everest is not one of them, are managing and controlling who's on the trail, when they're on the trail. Like we were just in Machu Picchu, and we're walking into Machu Picchu, and they only allow 500 people on the trail every day, and most of those are porters. So there's only like 200 people on the trail, limiting danger, damage to the trail, damage to the environment, to the people. They don't do that here. And they don't restrict the amount of people going in on any given day, on any given route. And people on Everest or wherever talk about the risks of high altitude and people dying. The reality is that people are far more dangerous on a mountain than anything else. So probably the biggest danger on Everest is people. The biggest danger on Kilimanjaro is also people. Like every time I'm there, usually from Stella Point up or down or around that danger zone, we're seeing serious life-threatening issues with people. And they don't have oxygen, they don't have medical equipment, they don't have any guides, or the guides left them, which happens quite a bit because they can't help them because they're on their own with one person. We're rescuing people all the time. And that's one of the reasons we bring one-to-one on the summit nights, because I know that there's a high percentage that some of our guys are going to be called away to have to drag somebody else off the mountain. So that's the challenge. We're going to 18,000 feet or 19,000 feet with not enough time. And somebody might be able to do it in 5 days, but then somebody else might not be able to do it in 5 days. And I had a guy, he was just lying on the ground as we were coming down the mountain, and this happens all the time, but he was just lying on the ground. We started talking to him. He was he was listening to what I was saying, but he really couldn't respond. We put him on oxygen. We had to carry him, literally carry him down the mountain, and he died before he got to the high camp. And that's happening. They don't like to talk about it, and they don't release statistics, but every time I'm there, there's always an issue. Like somebody died last week on the mountain. And there was even a doctor there, and they couldn't deal with the issue. So it's happening all the time. And I think the biggest risk is that those people are deciding to take more risk than we're taking. And if that's always going to be the issue. Same on Everest. If you're going to do stuff and you don't have the experience, like climbing Everest, and you've never been to 26,000 feet before, well, how are you going to know what it's like? You're taking a massive risk. And all these people that are being dragged off Everest and dragged off mountains, they just shouldn't be there, and there's no control over whether they should be or not. So that's a big question, but it's, overcrowding is a big issue. On the summit night, usually because a lot of people have filtered out. We were filming there a few years ago. We have a video on Kili, and the guys were. I'm always telling people 50% of people don't make it, and they're like, yeah, whatever. I don't believe you. We're all going to make it. But you could see it. They could see it in their video. They're like, oh, all these people were turning, going back. That's a risk if those people keep going, and guides let them go. And I think that's the bigger challenge culturally in these places too, is that they think people are paying to get to the top, where people are actually just paying for the logistics and for people not to make those decisions for you. And a lot of people that go to Kilimanjaro, in their head thinking, these guys know what they're doing, they'll get me down. They'll know when to stop me. Well, that's the problem, they're not going to stop you. So having more people with experience is critical, but also knowing that that's the case, knowing that you need to make the decision because somebody else is probably not going to make it for you. And then it's too late because you're in a situation where you can't walk, you can't move, you need to be physically moved off the mountain. Well, that takes numbers, and that interferes with other people. So these are all big debates. With restrictions comes more higher fees. And Kilimanjaro, they'll take in over $1,000 per person. And none of that money really goes back to the mountains. So there's corruption, there's bigger issues with all of this, but really people are the biggest cause of of problems on any mountain. And overcrowding doesn't help that. I could answer that for a long time.
Thanks for bringing back the bad memories. I summited 10 years and 2 days ago, and I've got the pictures to show I was there, but I wasn't there. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is I've decided that I have acute mountain sickness and above 15,000 feet. At Kibo Hut, I was great, but the last 2 hours getting up to the summit, I was completely out of it. I had a literally out-of-body experience. I was watching the guide take my backpack, take my hand, take me by the arm, and then walk me down the mountain. Now, the question I've got for you is, I'm going back to the Himalayas in October, and I want to know what you think of Diamox as a prophylactic.
I'm sorry about your out-of-body experience. I've been there too, so I know exactly what it's like. Diamox, I would say absolutely take it. There's no, I think all the research says take it. It's not EPO. It's not an illegal drug. It's a diuretic, so it'll make you go to the toilet more, so hydration becomes critical when you're on Diamox. It's a drug that you can take. It's going to increase oxygen flow in your body. It's going to increase oxygen to the muscles, so your recovery is going to be better. There's nothing to suggest not to take it, and if I watch it, because when we're in the Himalayas, I'll be there in October too, and we're testing people's PO2 levels morning and night, so and you should invest in one of those too. So when you're checking your oxygen level and your heart rate, we're noticing that people are recovering far greater on Diamox than they are without it. So absolutely take it. Take whatever your doctor tells you to take, but 250 milligrams would be normal. Some people prescribe half of that in the morning, half of that in the evening, but I would follow your doctor's instructions on that one. Definitely take it.
Thank you for the talk. Did you have a mentor growing up, and how did this mentor inspire you to become the climber and trekker you are today?
Good question. Definitely not my parents, because they tried to talk me out of everything I ever tried to do, which kind of makes you want to do it. So maybe you could argue that they were mentoring me in a way, in a weird way. I definitely have had a few different people, and more on the business side. So when we're setting up a business and we're running in different locations and coming from Ireland, living in the States, managing a website, company, all that stuff, I've definitely had 2 or 3 people that gave of their time freely to me, that they would consider themselves business gurus in their own fields, that helped me along the way. But I definitely think probably if I think back on my early childhood, because that's when I started climbing, started doing cycling trips, when we were 12 years old, just cycling all over the country in Ireland and up around mountains and hills and getting kicked out of hostels and doing all the bad stuff you shouldn't be doing, but you do anyway. My grandparents were probably the people that really pushed me. My mother's parents, because my dad's parents came from a very poor family, and they really had nothing. And my granddad was in a wheelchair most of his life and struggled. And my dad kind of had to go out and work when he was 15 and then put his brother and sister through university and deal with that. So he was kind of harsh. He was like, get a job, get a government job that they're going to give you a pension, and get a proper job, and don't be messing around, and don't take risk. But my mother's parents were business people, and they had their own business, and then their sisters and all had all different businesses, and they were the people that kind of were, pushed me to do things. And if I think back on conversations, like my dad never had it. The only conversation my dad had was get out and work when I was 15. But my grandparents were there kind of guiding me through all the decisions, and were very wise people that kind of gave me a lot, I think, of who I am today. But if I was going to put it down to, different people at different times. So I could argue my wife has mentored me for the last 8 years, 7 years of marriage. Pulls me back in when I need to, and has, pushed me to where I need to be. But it's hard. There's definitely different people at different times. I couldn't say that there was one person that especially when I was training, in my 20s, kind of climbing in the Alps and training. Probably my best friend, if anyone, at the time, the guy I went to climb Everest with. Definitely has his flaws, but I mean, he was like, he had this sheer focus on this is how we get stuff done. He worked for Vodafone, which is a telecoms communications company, and then he worked for Google. And he had this kind of, this way of just analyzing stuff and getting stuff done. And that he dragged me along with him. And I was just lucky enough to be the one that climbed Everest and went on to do this. So definitely different people. And definitely, like if I was going to, surrounding yourself with the right people is absolutely critical. Whether it's in university life, definitely when I was in university, I lacked that. I didn't have maybe the people around me that I needed to kind of to steer me in the right direction. But pre that and post that, I've definitely just met the right people and been lucky to get that sort of guidance. But not one person that did it. Lots of different people probably saw me and went, this guy needs a lot of help. Let's take him on and mold him and shape him. Good question, though. I'll have to think better about that one.
I plan on summiting Mount Oria this fall.
I think I was up there this morning. I think we drove over.
Well, I won't go on the technical parts, though. My question really is, how many people do you take in your group? It looked like, kind of like a mob scene, really. And how do you manage a large group like that?
Good question. Most of our groups are 10. There's 10 clients in a group. Now, when I go, like that group that was up there, the mob scene, was a bunch of Irish people. 19 of them. I would not do that normally. The only reason I took on that group is because I'd worked with them before, and I trekked in the Himalayas with them, and they were out training. They had this guy who was kind of group managing them. Because when people come from all over the world, whether they're coming from Kansas or Colorado or Ireland or England or Europe, they're going to come with different levels of fitness, age levels, different expectations. That's when it becomes super challenging. That is probably the hardest thing that we have to do, is managing people in that environment under those circumstances. So even though that looked like a large number of people, we'd have like 40 staff with us for a group of like 10 people. And all of our groups are 10 people, whether it's in the Himalayas or on Kilimanjaro or wherever it may be. If I'm going on a trip, I'll take more than that, because just from the experience of managing bigger groups. But also we actually, don't have that many people coming on our trips. We probably have, 250 people a year on different trips, whether it's in South America or the Himalayas or wherever. So we can, get on Skype. I can talk to people every day. Most of our time is spent talking to people. We have like 45-page documents that we send out. My wife is emailing, I'm emailing. We're dealing with people all the time. We're having phone conversations with people, educating them on training, preparation. So we can get into that individual level of preparation, because that's what's needed. People are coming from wildly different backgrounds, and their expectations and understanding of what's required is very different. So it's a hard job managing those people on the mountain. The harder part is managing them before they go. So being available 5 days a week is kind of critical, as much as we possibly can, to deal with their queries, get them prepared, get them mentally prepared, get them physically prepared, even having them understand every facet of the trip and how it all plays out. So definitely hard. As I said last week, or alluded to the fact, we were in Peru and then there was a teacher strike, and the teachers started ripping up the train line from the bottom of Machu Picchu, and there's no roads there. So then we have to do an extra 10-mile walk along the train tracks to get on a 7-hour bus ride, which should have been like a 2-hour bus ride, on dodgy roads, to get back at like 2 o'clock in the morning when we should have been back at 7 o'clock. So some people reacted quite poorly, and some people didn't. Oh, why do we have to do this? And, and some of them had plenty of money, and they were like, why can't we just get a helicopter I was like, well, that's not going to happen. But yeah, we deal with all sorts of people in all sorts of situations. And I think having people prepared beforehand makes a big difference. We have like a video on our website that shows the trip, and there's people on the trip that kind of explain their experience of dealing with us, how we kind of got them ready, prepared beforehand, so when they got to the mountain, they were ready to experience it rather than have a million questions when they arrived there. So it's definitely a harder job sometimes than others. Depends on where people, usually Irish people are the worst because they're, they just want to party and you got to control them and they don't want to drink water, and it's like, it's like babysitting, and you're not getting paid as much as you think we do. So, yeah, there's a lot of work in there before and after the trip.
We have time for one last question.
Okay.
Right here.
What's your personal favorite trek? Or let me, at least from like 19,000 feet and below, what would be your favorite personal trek?
I think personally, the Himalayas has an alluring draw that, like every time I go there, like every time I go to Kilimanjaro, it's an amazing experience. And 50% is always the people, 50% is the place. So if you're interested, if you can hang out with groups and Irish people and other people, group setting is great. To really experience the mountains, the less people on the trip, the better. So people do play into the trips, and we do a lot of trips in Nepal, but I would have to say, from going to the Himalayas, definitely the Everest region, like you're standing looking at mountains that are 16,000 feet above your head, even though you're looking at Kilimanjaro, 14, 15,000 feet up. The Himalayas are just mind-blowing, and every time I go there, I'm just captivated by just the beauty of the mountains, the people, the culture, the Sherpa people. Kathmandu is not my favorite place in the world, but places like Pokhara on the Annapurna side are just absolutely mind-blowing. Beautiful lakes, 26,000-foot peaks right as you walk off the plane. Namche is amazing. Above Namche, we were supposed to get married just on the hilltop above Namche at 13,000 feet. And that's a whole other story. We got married in Lawrence, Kansas. But that's another, but the scenery there is spectacular. There is no doubt in my mind that going into that region, and it's not even like above Namche, it's above like Dingboche, which is the next town up towards the Everest Memorial that was in the Everest movie where Josh Brolin walks around the corner. From there up to base camp, and the scenery of like Nuptse, Pamori, all these like monster mountains, 23, 26,000 feet, and you're at like 15, 16, and they're right in front of you. Probably in Pakistan is the closest you can get to that, but the Everest region with the access and the safety there, it's pretty special. I think we're out of time. I thank you all for listening, and thank you for your time. Thank you for coming. I'll be at the back too if anyone else has any questions.